Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Nedarim daf Ayin Zayin. And we are at the very top, very first words on daf Ayin Zayin. I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. So today we're going to discuss the ability to revoke and annul vows on Shabbat. That's the main topic for today. And so we begin by citing a Mishnah that we learned all the way back in Masechet Shabbat on Daf Kuf Nun Zayin, so near the end of Masechet Shabbat. So what did we say? Tanan Hassam, we learned there, Mefirin Nedarim b'Shabbos. One can revoke a neder on Shabbos. This is referring to the revocation that a father or husband, or potentially even and husband, can do. And so that is the revocation that we're talking about, and that can happen on Shabbat. In addition, one, may make a request to have a neder annulled when it comes to something that one needs for Shabbat. And if we take a look at the Perish HaRush is on the right-hand inner margin, the most inner margin. If we look 6 lines down, L'tzorach HaShabbos, it says, Kigon Nidre Achila Ushtiya, that like if you were to prevent yourself from being able to eat and drink on Shabbos, well then better believe that would be something that you need to be able to do, and so it would be a need for Shabbos. And the various, Rishonim talk about, a neder against wine, a neder against meat, a neder against bread, all of those being things that you need to be able to eat on Shabbos. Bottom line is that, but a neder against chocolate may not be sufficiently, L'tzorach Shabbos. But in any event, the point is, it depends on how desperate you are. But the point is that in connection with being matir a neder, it's only with respect to the things that are necessary with Shabbos. Now, the way I just read it is one way to read it, but you could also read the reference to l'nedarim shehein l'tzorach HaShabbos as referencing back to not only the nish'alin, but even the mefirin. And let's take a look, and there's going to see the question that the Gemara is going to ask. So, Ibailahu, Mefirin Nedarim b'Shabbos. When we say that we can revoke vows, that the husband or father can revoke vows on Shabbos, L'tzorach HaShabbos, do we say, like the end of that line, that it's also L'tzorach HaShabbos, Odilma Afila Shelo L'tzorach, or maybe it's even not L'tzorach? And we take a look in the Ran, the second line of the Ran, Mefirin Nedarim b'Shabbos. We'll take a look at 2 Rans here. Mefirin Nedarim b'Shabbos L'tzorach HaShabbos. When we say that one can be meifir a neder, one can revoke a neder on Shabbos, is it L'tzorach HaShabbos? And Had Dekatani L'tzorach HaShabbos. And when the Mishnah in Masechet Shabbos taught the words L'tzorach HaShabbos, Akula Masnisim Kai, it was going on the entire Mishnah, not just the comment about making a request to annul a vow, but also on Da'afilu Hafara Dafka L'tzorach Shabbos, that even the Hafara, that is the first item that was mentioned there, would also be for Shabbos. Okay, Dilma, or maybe Afilu Shelo L'tzorach HaShabbos. And then again, the Ran, picking up in that Ran, Delokai Ela Ashe'ela, that it would only apply, that the words L'tzorach HaShabbos only apply to asking for another neder, a regular, any person who asks a chacham or a beit din to annul a neder, and that would be what we're referring to, and only then that's when it's L'tzorach HaShabbos. And why is that different? Bishum de kevan de tzarach chacham olishlosha, because you need a chacham or 3 people in order to annul the vow. Or shlosha had yotod, or 3 regular people. Mechzi kadina, it looks like you're going to the beit din, and going to a beit din is something that doesn't happen. We don't have judgment on Shabbat. And so as a result, because this looks like you're asking for judgment, so as a result, we're going to say no. Inami, or alternatively, so that would be one possible distinction between the two cases, that when it comes to hafara, so it's the husband or the father doing it for the wife or the daughter. And so as a result, it doesn't look like going to a court case. Indeed, a father or a husband would not be allowed to serve as a judge in a court case for his daughter or for his wife. So as a result, that might not look like it. So that would be one distinction between the two cases. Inami, or another distinction, is she'ein shah overis l'she'ela, that when it comes to a husband or a father who is being made for the neder, who's revoking the neder, well, those situations are situations where if you don't do it on Shabbos, you lose your opportunity. Because we said that we paskin like the Tanakama in the debate between the Tanakama and the positions that we saw yesterday, that the two rabbis who said yesterday that you have me'et late, that you have a 24-hour period. So if in fact we don't say you have a 24-hour period, but rather you only have until the end of Shabbos, if you don't use the Shabbos to revoke those vows, you won't be able to do it any longer. So those are two reasons to make a distinction. So what's the answer? So Tashma. So we're going to have, what the Gemara is going to do is we're going to give one answer, then we're going to give the exact opposite answer, and then we're going to explain how both answers can be true. So Ibailahu, Mefirin, so we asked the question. So Tashma, so now we're picking up a fourth line on Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, middle of the line, the tet and the tuf and the shin. Tashma, the Tani Rav Zuti Devei Reb Papi, that Rav Zuti from the yeshiva of Rav Papa, he taught the following: Ein Mefirin Nedarim Elo Tzorach Shabbos. Oh, the answer is you can only do hafara, you can only do the revocation if it's necessary for Shabbos. Well, one second, Amar Rav Ashi. One second, Halo Tanan Hachi. We have another Mishnah, namely our Mishnah. This is why the Gemara is being brought here, because our Mishnah is playing a role in the discussion. Because what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said when we had the we said that you can have a chumrah or a kula. We said that you can have nadra im chashecha mefer ad shelo techshach. So here we have a situation where we say, right? So the Gemara says nadra im chashecha mefer la ad shelo techshach, that if she makes a neder on, either Friday night, Friday evening, Friday or Shabbos evening, it has to be revoked before nightfall. Well, the amra l'tzorach Shabbos in shelo l'tzorach Shabbos lo. And if you're going to tell me that the only reason to revoke, that permitted to revoke on Shabbos, is because it's l'tzorach Shabbos, and you can't revoke for not l'tzorach Shabbos, my area chashecha. Who cares about whether it's about to get dark? There's another question that you need to ask. You need to ask whether whether afilu b'toch hayom einu yachal lahafir. Even in the middle of the day, you won't be able to revoke it to shelo l'tzorach Shabbosu if it's not necessary for the Shabbos. So as a result, we have to say that our Mishnah is clearly saying or clearly indicating that revoking a vow, revoking a neder on Shabbos does not have anything to do with the nature of the vow. Because if it did have something to do with the nature of the vow, our Mishnah would need to tell us that it had something to do with the nature of the vow. So Tanaihi, so the Gemara answers, you're absolutely right. We have proofs from the Tanaic period that go in each direction, and that's because we have a machlokas Tanaim. And what's the machlokas Tanaim? The machlokas Tanaim is the machlokas that we saw yesterday, because the Tanakama says hafara nedarim kol hayom. One can do hafara only on the Jewish day that one hears about it. But Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Amru, me ace lays. No, you have a 24-hour period. So what is the ramification? The Gemara explains. Lamanda Amr Kol Hayom Ein Kol Hayom Ein Tvei Lo. Look, according to the one who says just that Jewish day, well, it's just that Jewish day and not going into Sunday. So as a result, if you don't revoke it on Shabbos, there's nothing you're going to be able to do any longer. So then, afilu shalol tzarich haShabbos mefer. Well, in that situation, there's no choice about it. You're going to be stuck if you let it go through the day. So then, as a result, you can revoke even vows that have nothing to do with Shabbos. But Lamanda Amar Me'es Le'es, but according to the two opinions who say that you have a 24-hour period, well then L'tzorach HaShabbos in, Shelo L'tzorach HaShabbos lo. Look, if there's going to be time on Sunday that you can revoke the vows, so then only revoke the vows that have to do with Shabbos on Shabbos, and then after Shabbos you can revoke the rest of the vows. So that is the explanation. And of course, as we've said, we paskin like the view that you only have that day, meaning only until the end of Shabbos. And so as a result, when it comes to Hafara, you'd be able to do Hafara even Shelo L'tzarach HaShabbos. Okay, so now let's take a look at the next line of the Mishnah. So the Gemara is going to ask a question tied to the Mishnah's ruling that one may ask on Shabbos for the annulment of a vow necessary for Shabbos. So the question that we're about to ask is a simple question. When we clearly, the implication of saying that you can only revoke a vow regarding the Shabbos is that we don't want people to revoke vows willy-nilly on Shabbos, right? That's not, if it was totally proper behavior, well, then we can revoke all vows. The fact that we don't say that suggests that there's that revocation of some vows is not particularly good. So now the question is once we're saying that, what about a situation where there was an opportunity to revoke, to annul the vow? So now we're talking not just about, remember, now we're talking not about revocation, but annulment. So we're talking about where I come and I've made a neder, and I go to the Chacham and I say, I'd like the neder revoked. And the answer is it's only going to be able to be revoked if it's necessary for Shabbos. So let's assume it's necessary for Shabbos. I had somehow said that I wasn't going to drink wine on Shabbos, and so I needed to be able to revoke it. Well, what happens if I had the opportunity to do that revocation on Friday and I didn't use it? Do we say that, listen, you had the opportunity on Friday and you didn't use it, and so as a result, you've lost the opportunity on Shabbos because you could have done it on Friday, and so therefore, or do we not say that? So let's take a look and we'll see that insight. We say that you're allowed to ask for the annulment of vows that are necessary for Shabbos. So ibailahu, the shelo hayala panai. Or are we talking about a situation where we did not have the opportunity to ask before Shabbos? Oh, Dilma kishahaya lahem panai. Or maybe we can say that even if you had the opportunity, it's okay, you can annul it because it's necessary for Shabbos. So Tashma, we're going to learn from the following story. There is Dikiku le Rabbanan livrei de Rav Zutra brei de Rav Zera, that the son of Rav Zutra, who is the son of Rav Zera, so the grandson of Rav Zera, he actually, what happened? So the rabbis were dealing with his neder on Shabbos. And what kind of neder was it? Hello, Mark. Afilu ben Nedarim shahaya lahem panai ba'od yom. That it was even a neder that he could have revoked before Shabbos. And yet the Chachamim, the Rabbanan, dealt with it on Shabbos. And so we see that, in fact, even if you have the opportunity, it's okay. We can revoke it on Shabbos. So, all right. So that's the next piece. So now the question is, we in the Ran, we explained one of the key differences between the revocation and the annulment is that in the annulment, you have three judges or a Chacham, and that looks like going to a Beit Din. So Rav Yosef had an idea that since we're not supposed to do it unless it's something that is necessary for Shabbos, maybe I should treat those two situations differently. So Sava Rav Yosef Lamema, Rav Yosef thought to say the following: Nish'alin and Nedarim b'Shabbos, that when it comes to annulling vows on Shabbos, b'yachad mumcha in b'shlosha hedyotot lo, that you could do so when you go to a chacham because he's one person. But when you go to a court of three, that looks too much like going to a court. Mishum de mischaze kedina, because it looks like going to a court case. So Amar le Abaye, kevan de svira lan, afilu me'umad, afilu bekrovim, va'afilu belayla, lo mitchasa kedina. So as a result, even though we say that you're not allowed to revoke you're not allowed to annul a neder that has nothing to do with Shabbos. Abaye points out that, listen, when it comes to something that has to do with Shabbos, it really doesn't look that much like a court case, because look at all the differences that we have. Abaye notes. First of all, afilu me'umad. In a court case, the judges need to be sitting, right? So the judges need to be sitting, and so as a result, even if they're standing, when it comes to a Hataras Nedarim, that's okay when it comes to Hataras Nedarim, but not when it comes to a court case. In addition, afilu bekrovim. So even if the people who are sitting on the court case are relatives of the person who is standing before them asking for the annulment of the vow, so that's okay when it comes to annulment, but it's not okay when it comes to a court case. And afilu belayla. When it comes to a real court case, we don't have judgment at night. But when it comes to Hataras Nedarim, it's explicit that you can do it at night. So lo mitchazeh kadina. So the bottom line is, it does not look like a court case. It's not a court case, and so as a result, we can do it at night. We can do it with relatives. We can do it even when the judges are standing, and so as a result, Abaye says that there are sufficient differences between Hataras Nedarim and the court case that when it comes to something that is being revoked, that is being annulled because it has something to do with Shabbos, so we're going to say absolutely annul the vow and you will be fine. Okay, so that is the next piece, and now Rav is going to teach a rule, and the Gemara is going to question why it's necessary given our Mishnah. So let's take a look. So Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. So Rav Huna, Rabbi Abba said in the name of Rav Huna, who said in the name of Rav. So halacha mefira nedarim b'layla, that you're allowed to revoke vows at night. Well, v'hamas nizani. Why did Rav need to tell us that you could revoke vows at night? We have our Mishnah, because what did our Mishnah say? Nadra b'leile Shabbos. If the woman made a vow on the night of Shabbos, right? He's allowed to. What did the Mishnah said? Let's take a look back at the language of the Mishnah. So, Yafar B'leile Shabbos. He's specifically allowed to revoke the vow at night on Shabbos. So, Ella Ema Halacha Nish'alin Balayla. So, what was he really teaching? He wasn't teaching about Hafara. He was teaching about Hatara. Again, Hafara is when it's the father and the husband that we're referring to as revocation. Hatara is when a person asks for himself or herself for the vow to be annulled, and that can also happen at night, is what Rav is saying. So Amar le Rabbi Abba the Rav Huna. So Rabbi Abba asked Rav Huna, 1 second. You said Rabbi Abba, because Rabbi Abba was saying in the name of Rav Huna that he said in the name of Rav. He asked him, did Rav really say this? Amar Rav Haki, did Rav really say this? So Amar Le Ishtik. Well, he didn't say it explicitly. He was quiet about it, and I had said it in his presence. So Amar Le Ishtik Ka'amrat. Well, 1 second. When you say he was quiet, what kind of quiet was it? Because there are two kinds of quiet. One kind of quiet is somebody who doesn't want to get into a fight kind of quiet. And so that person isn't necessarily agreeing with you. Shasi Kamrat. Or is it like if you give somebody something to drink, and they don't say anything, and they take it and they drink it, well, then clearly they appreciated you're giving them something to drink. So is it like that where it was an acceptance, or no, it was just a quiet because they didn't want to get into a fight? So Amar of Ika bar Avin is the kiklei Rav l'Rava. So we're going to teach a lesson that Rav Ika bar Avin said. Excuse me. Thank you so much. That Rav really actually, did this with respect to Rabbah, because what happened? Rabbah had come to Rav and asked for a vow to be annulled. The Kitona debe Rav. So in a little room in the yeshiva, Omid Yechidi Uvalayla, he stood alone and at night. So what did we see from here? We see, of course, the alone is not really the chiddush here, because a mumcha, an expert, is able to do it on his own. But what's key is that he did it at night. And so and of course he did it standing. So highlighting it's not like a typical judgment. And so we see that doing it at night is permitted. So Amar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman, halacha nish'ala nedarim omed, yechidi, uvalayla, uvashabis, uvakrobim. So the bottom line is that the halacha is you can seek the annulment of vows, whether even if the person is standing, even if the judge is standing, even if the judge is alone, obviously he's got to be an expert, a mumcha. It can even be at night, it can even be on Shabbos, and it can even be from a relative. And even if there was opportunity to ask on the day, on Friday before Shabbos, but again, it would have to be something that was necessary for Shabbos. So Omeid. How do we know about the standing? V'hatanya Yarad Rabban Gamliel. I mean, is it really true that you can do it while standing? Because we have a brisa that where Rabban Gamliel was asked about a vow, and Yarad Rabban Gamliel minachamor, he got off his donkey, nisatev, and he wrapped himself up, v'yashav v'hitir lo nidro, and he sat down and he annulled the vow. So I don't understand. You just said that he could do it standing. Well, then why did he have to get off his donkey? So Rabban Gamliel suffered. No, the difference is another important issue, and we saw this a little bit yesterday, and we'll remind ourselves of the rule today. Rabban Gamliel suffered. Rabban Gamliel says, and now we have to read this like the Bach. Ein poskin b'charata. We're not allowed to use regret as a basis to annul a vow. Okay, that is Rabban Gamliel's position. So we need to uproot the vow by identifying a mistake that was made. And so as a result, there needs to be a fact that could have been known, but wasn't realized at the time that the vow was made. And if the person would have known that fact, then he wouldn't have made, or she wouldn't have made the vow in the first place. But simple regret is not sufficient. It's not sufficient. And so as a result, that is why Rabban Gamliel needed to sit down. Uvayayune. That requires concentration. You need to think creatively to say, well, did you consider this fact? Did you consider that fact? What facts might have been relevant? Did you consider the ramifications that you were going to sit at the dining room table and you weren't going to eat the chocolate, and everybody else was going to have chocolate, and they would all feel bad for you? Did you consider that? Oh, I didn't consider that. So all right, so now we have a mistake, but we have to come up with that. That takes creativity, takes initiative, takes real concentration. So as a result, that's why. So Ahave Yashav. That's why Rabban Gamliel had to get off and sit down. But Rav Nachman, the Rav Nachman that we just cited in a moment ago, where we said Amar of Rava, Amar of Nachman, that the halacha is that you could do it standing. He says ain poskin. He says poskin. Excuse me. Take out the word ain. He says poskin b'charata va'afilu me'ubed. So he says, no, regret is all you need. And if regret is all you need, that doesn't take too much concentration, because the point is that if you make a vow and you regret making the vow, then you go to the Chacham or to the Beit Din, and you can annul the vow. And Baruch Hashem, that's how we paskin. That's why we begin when we do Hataras Nedarim on Erev Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Kippur. We say that we regret the fact that we made the vow. That's the key element that then allows the Beit Din to say mutter lach, and that says that the vow is permitted to you. Okay, so all right, so Amar le Rava. So now we're going to, having referenced Rav Nachman, having referenced one teaching of Rava in the name of Rav Nachman, we're now going to teach another lesson of Rav Nachman about vows. So Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. Rava said to Rav Nachman, Chazimar Haime Rabbanan de Asar Rava v'Amar. Did you see what happened? That one of the rabbis came from Eretz Yisrael, came from the west, and he said, "Is the kikule Rabbanan livrei de Rav Huna bar Avin?" That the rabbis were talking and they annulled the vow of the son of Rav Huna bar Avin, v'sharule nidre, and they annulled the vow for him, v'amrule, and then, but that wasn't all they did. They said something else. They said, "Zil uve rachame al nafshak dechatus." You got to realize that you actually sinned, and you need to pray for God for mercy because of that. And what was the sin? The sin was the fact that you made the neder in the first place. The Tani Rabdimi Achua de Rav Safra, that the Rabdimi, the brother of Rav Safra, said in a brisa, Kol hanoder, anybody who makes a neder, even though he fulfills it, nikra chote, we're going to call him a sinner. And this is the principle that we have seen several times. We saw that it's even like building a bama, like it's building an altar outside the Beit Hamikdash, and the Ran explained, because you think you're doing something good, but you're not. You're doing something bad. Hashem has given us enough prohibitions. We don't need to add to them. So Amar Rav Zvid says, Mikra, what's the verse that shows that you've sinned? Because it says in Dvarim, Perikav Gimel, Pasuk of Gimel, Kisech do lindor lo yevachache. If you don't make a vow, you're not going to have a sin. Well, what's the implication? Lo chadalta. Right? If you didn't refrain from vowing, meaning if you didn't refrain from making a neder, meaning you did make a neder, well, then in that situation, you would have a sin. Now, that's not the literal understanding. That verse is actually saying that you wouldn't be possible to have a sin, because you can't violate your word. But in any event, that the clear midrashic read is to say that obviously, if you do make a vow, if you do make a neder, then you have sinned. Okay, so that is that. So now the Gemara is going to cite 3 related brisas, and with that we'll conclude for the day. So Tanya, brisa number 1: Ha'omer le'ishto, if you say to your wife, Kol nedarim shetidori efshi shetidori, all the nedar that you make, it is, I'm not in agreement with them. Ein zen neder, or this is not a vow. Lo amar klum, or so if you say kol neder again, right? So again, either you say, look, the vows that you make are not in accordance with what I want, or you say that this is not a vow. You have not actually done anything effective because you didn't use the proper language. And we will see tomorrow, this is a lead into tomorrow's key question, is what is the precise language that one should use to revoke a neder? That we're going to see tomorrow. So, but if you say, Yafa Asisa, you did the right thing, O Ein Kamoscha, or there's nobody like you did such a great job. If you hadn't made this vow, I would have said you should make the vow. Well, then, Dvarav Kayamin. Then that is considered actually affirmatively confirming the vow, and then as a result, you wouldn't be able to annul the vow and to revoke the vow any longer. So the point is when it comes to revoking the vow, you need to use precise language. When it comes to confirming the vow, the less precise language is also okay. All right. So Tanya. So now the next brisa number 2. Lo yomer adam leishto b'Shabbos. A person should not say to his wife on Shabbos, mufer lechi, that the vow is revoked for you. Batal lechi, the vow is canceled for you. Kederach she'omer la b'chol, the way he says it on Chol. Now, we said he's allowed to revoke the vow. What we're saying now is that he shouldn't use the same language. And again, we've now seen 2 potential languages that work. Revoking, mufer lechi, it's revoked for you. Batil lechi, it's canceled for you. So then that works on a weekday. But Ella Omerla, well, what should you say on Shabbos? You made a neder about this food that you're not going to eat it. Take and eat it, right? Take and drink it. So in those situations, and then it'll be clear that the guy is trying to revoke the vow. So just saying that I want, that your vow is not according to my will, that doesn't work. But if I take an affirmative action that shows that I want you to violate the vow, then on Shabbos that will be sufficient. And so the neder will be violated by itself. And Rabbi Yochanan adds to this, but you still have to have the thought in your mind. When we say bilibo, it means in your heart, that you have to cancel the vow in your heart. So Tanya. So as a result, in addition to telling her to take and eat or take and drink, you need to actually think about the vow and revoke it in your heart. Okay, so Tanya, and we have a third brisa. Beis Shammai, this brisa has a debate between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai omrim b'Shabbos mevatel belibo. On Shabbos, you need to cancel it in your heart. B'chol motzi b'svasav. But on the weekday, you need to express it aloud. Beis Hillel omrim, and Beis Hillel says no. It is enough to just think it in your heart. And you don't need to actually express it out loud. And so with that, we will conclude. And that, of course, is, again, how we paskin. And so we'll pick up with Amar Rabbi Yochanan on the third line from the bottom, God willing, tomorrow. And again, then we will be discussing the key question of what is the right language to use in order to revoke a neder. Okay, have a wonderful day, and God willing, I will see you tomorrow.